Welcome to the Neja Chuan podcast. My name is Isaac Kamens. This is a bi-weekly podcast where my friend Jess O'Brien and I discuss internal martial arts, Qigong, and meditation. This week we continue our discussion of the 1999 article by Marcus Brinkman in the Journal of Asian Martial Arts. This episode focuses around the concept of swinging and how this relates to martial arts and Neigong. Then we look at his version of Luo De Xiu's approach to using Jing, Qi, and Shen in martial arts. And then in our Patreon episode, we continue our discussion of the Blurred Boundaries book by Hung Zihan, where Bruce Francis has just arrived at the School of Hung Yishang and is about to take a challenge match. So check out the Patreon for that, and take care of yourselves and be well.
In today's episode, let's return to the Journal of Asian Martial Arts, Volume 8, Number 2 from 1999, where Marcus Brinkman, the well-known Chinese martial artist and acupuncturist, has a terrific article entitled Internal Martial Arts of Taiwan, and where he's interviewed by Kevin Craig about his experiences and teachings. So last time we were talking about Swai Show, the idea of the swings, as they're called, in energy gates, and also he translated as whipping palm. The idea of those relaxed arm swings where your arms are loose, but they still carry so much force and power. And so he described it as, it's this multi-purpose tool. You can use them from long distance or from short distance. You can use them in a circular way. You can use them like a net. You can use them like a whip. You can use them like a baseball bat. He said you can combine with shaking, coiling, turning over, adhering, sticking, connecting, following. So you can use it for short or long Jing. So and that adaptability is something that you and I have talked a lot about, because we spent that whole first season on opening the energy gates, where the swings are such a critical part of it. And to me, it was a real eye-opener when I first came to internal martial arts to try and capture that way of striking and hitting with loose power rather than heavy, hard, sort of tight power that's characteristic of external martial arts. So Isaac, I was going to try to get your opinion. Like, when you do that first swing, you're supposed to do it super soft when you start swinging it and let your arms be hella loose. But how does that translate into usage in fighting, where you've got to hit with power and really knock somebody, but at the same time, paradoxically, you train it with this very loose training?
So there's stages to it. I mean, the first piece of it is getting the arms and legs to connect to the torso, so that when you turn your waist, your arms swing, essentially, right? That the tendency to want to hold your shoulders and kind of keep your arms stiff is the first thing you got to get rid of.
And that can be hard to convince yourself to let go with the arms.
Oh yeah. And that can take some time. And then the second stage is, so at that point, your arms are able essentially to land on your belly and kind of bounce off. So there's like a swing and a spring, right? So you swing to one side, it springs off, and you swing to the other side and it springs off. And so it's like a very even, kind of like windshield wipers or something, right? Going back and forth. And your arms are staying more or less with your body. There isn't a lot of, quote, whipping motion. The whip is made when you start getting the ability to have that loose arm, but your belly kind of, or your waist goes back and forth, right? So for one movement of your arm, you might move your waist 3 times, right? So there's a whoop, 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 kind of back and forth with your
like body. A counter movement, kind of like syncopated a little bit, where the belly and the arms aren't exactly connect.
You're turning with your arm and then away from your arm in the same motion. So this is most commonly seen in like Chen style Tai Chi. Very common in Bagua, where you have this reversal type motion. Single whip in the Wu style does it. So that type of, when you go, I mean, that's why it's called single whip, right? I mean, that's the whip motion, right? Is to get that swing to become a whip, right? So if you take a rope with a weight on the end of it, and you want to whip it, first you got to get the thing swinging in the air before it can, you can snap it. So
Mm,
it's like snapping a towel essentially, right?
mm.
You have to have a looseness in your arm. That's the swing part of it. And then you pull it back
Pull
real
it kind of, yeah.
fast, and that's the whipping motion. So that in your body becomes how you can kind of whip your arm. The um swings don't really have that in energy gates. It's mostly kept with you're not whipping back and forth, but they give you the ability to do it. And um there's a lot of things where um that's the ability to pull something one way and snap back really fast, is that whipping motion, right? So your arms become kind of like it's like a chain uh with a weight on the end, right? They can segment at the joints,
Mm,
and yet when they land as one thing, it's solid, right? So it has
mm.
the ability to kind of segment and be loose and then be solid at the end, right? So
Heavy on contact.
yeah, so you get that ability to like bend around things and move, like to hit somebody in the back of the head when you're standing in front of them, because you can whip your arm and sort of snap your wrist back a little bit. The actual action of it is you're rolling your shoulder, then you're making a circle with your elbow, then you're doing a little wiggle with your wrist at the end, and that gives you that whipping motion, right? So, related to the swing, it's just doing it faster and with more waist turns, right?
Mm.
So in the swing, you just turn one time each, for each flop of your arm, it's one waist turn. If you start doing two waist turns, you get where when your arm hits your body, you're turned the opposite way, right? And that starts to do this whop, 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 whop. It becomes like a windmill essentially, right? That you go from like doing everything where both arms are moving together to doing this sort of like
Mm. Like Yin style Bagua we were
yeah, I
watching.
mean,
Xie Pei Chi's classmate, Liu Shichang.
right, he's doing this way, but he's doing like cloud hands. But yeah, you can basically make two circles in front of you with your arms, and then have your waist go back and forth really quickly, and that kind of that exactly, that gives you that back. And
Yeah.
then when you start adding the segmented arm thing to that, you get the whip effect.
Yeah, I'm familiar with some white crane exercises we used to do in Tang Shu Dao where they're less turning your waist oriented. They're just about whipping your arms out over and
Yeah,
over
yeah,
again with much less Dantian movement or whatever. And that I'd see as sort of the more external way of doing it, at least in terms of that exercise set, which obviously is useful. But
yeah. But I mean,
yeah, this soft way of doing it is another approach.
almost all martial arts have something where you
Sure.
whip and slap the
Smack
person.
somebody. Yeah, it's fast and
Yeah,
hurts.
yeah.
I mean, I think when you combine it with internal martial arts, that's when it gets interesting. Cause like I think of, okay, say you're making contact, I'm squaring off with somebody, I reach out and make contact, they block me. Now I turn my waist and whip my hand. So if they block me high, I whip my waist and turn and hit them low. And when their hands come down to block that, I whip back and slap them across the face.
Mhm. Yeah, there's something this is going back to the swings essentially, that there's something that happens when your arm relaxes. It effectively acts like a big sort of water balloon, right? That as you swing it, it fills up, right? And there's this expansion that happens as you swing your arm. And when that swinging happens in an arc, it's going to go around something, not hit it. What a lot of this is used for is that you just, when you connect to someone's arm, you're not pushing against them, You just sort of swing and it moves their whole body.
And what's nice is your momentum doesn't stop. So when I make contact and hit that belly and it impacts, they're doubling over as my hand continues up above and comes
Right.
swiping
Swinging
down
back.
as they bend over and smash them ideally in the back of the head.
Hmm.
And that's the beauty of these swings, the Swaishow effect, where you hit but your arm keeps going. So there's you never have to it's the idea of not resetting, right? Not chambering and firing. It's just you're allowed to just keep swinging and swinging and swiping and swiping. And when you do something like Rosho with Kumar, he'll slap you once and his arm's still coming around, and when you block that, it'll sweep through it and come around again. And there's just like this relentless those circles add up somehow in a way that's it's also very intuitive. You don't have to necessarily think real hard about where you're going to hit next, because just the actual turning of your body and the sensitivity of your arms allows you to find holes and gaps that just sort of naturally appear. I
Yeah,
don't
there's
know.
just kind of like a blender effect,
The
right?
blender effect, right? And it's like there's something natural about when I swipe low and hit, it causes the person's hands to drop at the perfect moment when it's swinging right back to hit them high, and then they raise up again, and then I'm swinging back low. So you're kind of an instant ahead of them
Yeah,
with these
it's a
swings.
wheel, right? I mean, that's the whole idea of like again, I mean, I just think of if you think of like a double windmill kind of thing with your arms, that I mean, that's basically the action of Rosho essentially, right? That both arms are making a, circle in front of you. And so if you just get the sense of that, how do you make those two circles with your waist and your legs as um the root of it rather than just your shoulder, right? And that's really where the swings are about getting your body to integrate so that then when you do that sort of whipping windmill type of motion, you don't feel like your shoulder is going to dislocate and have to tense up.
Right.
Because that for a lot of people, the weak spot is the joint between the arm and the shoulder blade, it is tight. So when they swing, rather than it opening the shoulder blade and moving the stuff down in your mid back and in your ribs, it just kind of yanks on your shoulder
Hmm.
and it hurts. And
And maybe
so,
that's why you do the swing slow and soft and
right. Well,
and
that's the
easy at
exactly.
first. Yeah.
That's why the first stage is you really got to relax that stuff in your joints.
But it feels weak though when you're swinging loose like that and light. It just feels like, how am I ever going to hit somebody with this? You know?
Because it is. That depends on how tense you are, right? I mean,
Mm.
the more stuff you have getting in the way of it, the harder it is to do. When you finally just really can relax. I mean, this is one of those Yoda things where, the more you try to do it, the
Mm.
less you're going to get it. It really happens when you finally just let your arms, really let them relax, not go limp. And that's an important distinction, but that your arms are relaxed and you're letting your body do the movement and your arms are a secondary thing, right? Again, this is what creates the whip. That if your arm is stiff and you turn your body, it's just like a stick coming out of a ball. It doesn't have any whip to it.
Mm.
It has to have a flexibility to it in order to whip.
Hmm. The
Um,
suppleness and flexibility is
yeah,
comes first,
it's a
then the
weird
power.
it's a weird feeling because like I said, most people, there's this moment where your body is telling you if you keep doing this, your shoulder's going to dislocate, right? But if you can relax at that moment, other parts of your body engage and it doesn't pull your shoulder out. But you have to get through that fear of letting go of your arms essentially. And this is part of what the so energy gates is the water element. Kidneys are the organ associated with the water element,
Mm.
and the negative emotion that goes with the kidneys is fear. So
Mm.
part of what the swings are about is you're getting used to getting hit, the fear of like something hitting you.
Mm.
That's the
Mm.
part where you slap yourself. And then
Mm.
you're also getting rid of the fear of your arm ripping out of the socket when you swing,
Mm.
right? That tension at the end, so that when you throw a punch or swing your arm, you don't stop it at the end of the extension and pull it back. You're able
Mm.
to release and let it swing back the other way, like you were saying. And
Yeah. And I mean, that fear aspect reminds me of like that jump you have to make when you're doing Rosho or push hands, where you want to defend yourself and protect yourself, but at a certain point, to really get that soft power, you're going to have to give up a lot of your current abilities and start from zero. And so now you start losing again, and you're like, damn, this sucks. I'm afraid I'm going to lose. And I do remember a point of just a day I had an epiphany where I was going against somebody pretty good, and I just let go and said, let me just do this while I'm completely just weak as hell. And I'll be damned if it didn't end up working better than ever when I was able to make that jump. But like, it wasn't logical. I had to just sort of give up.
Yeah, well, that goes back to that eating bitterness or investing in loss,
Yep,
right?
that
That
was
the
it.
idea that, in order to get this stuff, you have to,
Because if
give
you let
up.
your arms go too soft, they might punch you right in the face, and But sure enough, my arms reacted, and they did it for me, kind of, and
Well, yeah,
my
I mean,
intuition took over, and it worked fine.
this is what the investing in loss, the process of it does, is it gives you the first, you just go, okay, fuck it. And I'm gonna lose. I'm gonna let the
Yeah.
person push me. I'm gonna go as soft as I can, knowing that I'm gonna lose and just being okay with that. Because not much is gonna happen to me if I get pushed. Um, then the second stage of it is you learn to sort of half go into that and start to come back. So you still know you're going to lose, but you're not just going one way and kind of giving up. You're going a little bit and then coming back and then kind of getting pushed, right? So you're starting a beginning of that wave to go back and forth, the back and forth. And eventually, and a lot of stages in between, you get where when you get pushed, you have no worry of getting knocked over. So it's like, you just kind of swing with it and whack, right? And you come back, and there's no um fear involved, and it's just kind of like a drunk just getting pushed and kind of flopping back. There's
Hmm.
no, everything is just kind of mushed around like a big amoeba, and force has no meaning without resistance, right? So when you can get to where you don't resist the other person's force, now that doesn't mean you give up. It just means you don't resist it. Mostly in this case, what it means is you go around it. A Drunken Immortals takes this to the extreme, right? You let the person punch you in the stomach, and you just kind of give up and let your whole body kind of bounce. And if you fall back a couple of feet, no problem. You just roll out of it and come back, and so that thing of you, but to do that, your mind has to give up on the I want to win, and that's really hard.
So yeah, I always love the discussion of the Swai Shao and that whipping, because man, that's powerful stuff. So let's return back to Marcus's discussion here. So the next question the interviewer has is, he talks about the energetic effects of various strikes. So above and beyond the physical aspect, what about the energetic aspect? So Marcus replies, speaking out from what Luo De Xiu taught him. He says, Luo De Xiu often discusses energetic effect within the genre of traditional terms, Jing, Qi, and Shen. And it's crazy how every different school uses it, and all of them use it in multiple ways that don't necessarily all
Right.
connect. So this is interesting how he connects it. So he says, the transmission of power and the reaction of the object affected by that transmission have a fundamental relationship to Jing, Qi, and Shen. Within an internal heart in the health cultivation context, the components of power transmission, Xing and Yi, are considered byproducts of cultivating Jing, Qi, and Shen. While within the context of martial arts, Xing and Yi are constituents devoted to the assault and disarrangement of Jing, Qi, and Shen. So Luo trains students to interpret energetic effects in relation to both of these perspectives. Weighing the energetic effect of an outside influence is partly a matter of understanding the energetic nature of the object receiving the influence. This is kind of complicated, but I think it kind of boils down to the idea of, if it's for a health context, you cultivate the Jing, Qi, and Shen, and from there you get the shape and the mind. Whereas if in a martial arts context, you cultivate shape in the mind so you can attack and destroy someone else's Jing, Qi, and Shen, is what the impression I'm getting from what he's saying here.
Yeah, there's different cycles of how the things work, right? So that's one layer to it. But the idea that Negong is about developing your mind and your body, right? So one method of it is to use the microcosmic orbit to develop those things, right? That's what we talked about with Baiwa's book, last season. The whole last season was basically about how you use the Jing, the Qi, and the Shen to develop your mind, your body, and your spirit, right? And to get to this final stage of being free or whatever, right? So that's what you're doing with yourself, right? But martial arts it's about doing the opposite of that to someone else, right?
Right.
You're not trying to make someone else healthy and happy. You're trying to destroy them, right? So
And make them unhappy.
Bruce's way of describing this is martial arts is reverse medicine, right? If I twist my shoulder a little bit, doing qigong, it feels good. If I twist someone else's shoulder a lot in martial arts, it's an armbar, right? So but it's the same mechanics in terms of how the body works, right? So I think, he's talking about more on an energetic level, but basically once you understand sort of how these matrices fit together, right? These sort of health and martial arts, how they mirror each other in a sense.
Yeah,
You
totally.
can use your knowledge of it to fuck with someone else, right? The idea, in a sense that, if you know all the pressure points and the things that you would use to fix someone, you can just hit that thing with a slightly different intent and it does damage, right?
That makes sense. Marcus goes on and sort of explains that same sort of concept. So he says, Jing, Qi, and Shen are terms which correspond to traditional Chinese medical view of the body's bioenergetic properties. However, in martial terms, some kinds of power are more useful in disturbing different aspects, such as disturbing someone's Shen. Other kinds of power are directed towards causing disruption of Jing. In actuality, because both Jing and Shen are representations of Qi, the body's normal Qi circulation will be affected. The Qi may constrict, causing the opponent to become more rigid. The Qi may disperse, leading to inability to respond. The Qi may flow upward, causing a loss of stability, or it may sink downward, causing double weightedness. So I like what he's saying there, where you use different attacks to smash into the Qi system, the energetic system of the other person, causing them to either uproot up or like get squashed down, or maybe you're squishing them inward so that they get rigid and froze up, or maybe it's a slap that just causes them to completely like lose their ability to respond and just get shaken up, kind of. So the
Yeah.
different types of strokes and attacks can cause these different types of energetic reactions,
It's like
basically.
chess. You have different moves that set your opponent up in different ways, and if you understand how it works, you can do one thing to kind of get them to react in a certain way that sets you up to do another one, right? Um, a real easy example is you throw your elbow at the person's face and they go, knowing that they're going to go to block it, and when they go to block it, you swing around and hit them with your fist, right? Like that.
It's a setup, kind of.
It's a setup, and you can do that with different sort of energetic feelings too. For example, one of the things with the swings is you do an empty one by someone's body, and their body kind of reacts to the swing because it thinks it's going to get hit, and when they hunch in a little bit, you change the direction of that swing and hit them up underneath the chin, right?
With the more substantial swipe. The interviewer brings up the idea of tan in Bagua, which means to test. Tan is the idea of just reaching out and seeing what the other guy does when you
It's a
poke him.
fake.
Pretty much. So he says testing or researching, tan, is a method of evaluating your opponent. This often refers to an attack used to create a specific response or to evaluate an opponent's reaction to a threat. It enhances your comprehension of his strengths and weaknesses. This method of evaluation can range from being relatively gross to being quite refined. For instance, Heng Yixiang often employed a testing tactic he referred to as jia jia zen zen, fake fake real real. This concept behind this ploy is to test an opponent's reactions with full power attacks. These attacks are intended to break an opponent's E, disconcerting his ability to respond in a precise manner. The diversionary aspect of this ploy is the fake, while delivery with full power is the real. Jia Jia Zen Zen is a very concrete example of testing. More sophisticated methods of testing are initiated before physical contact is initiated. The subtler applications of testing share common features with some of the diagnostic arts of Chinese medicine. So I like that. So even the fakes are pretty real. So you send out some strong strikes, just kind of knowing that they're going to get blocked. Then once you've tested them and you've seen what their response is, then you come in with the real hard hits.
You're doing with the intent that they're going to block it, but if they don't block it, you can just
it's as real as it needs to be if they
right.
don't block it. So,
And so
so
that's
it's not a true feint in that sense. It's
right.
It's real, but you know, kind of that if they're good, they're going to block
it's
it.
not
so you're aware
uncommitted. Yes, I think
of
that it isn't this idea of I'm doing it where I'm going to pull it back. I mean, this is what Rosho and push hands are all about, right? What do
that
you do at the
contact.
moment of contact? Well, that's when you employ one of these, sticking techniques or whatever, right?
You put the Jing to work.
Yeah, you have, and that's what we call techniques, and there's a lot of those. But
Right.
but what that blink of an eye when you contact somebody, that's really where, like what he's saying, you get a lot of information, and the more sensitive you are, the more information you get. It's kind of like sonar. When you hit them, there's a reverberation, and how that
bounces,
reverberation comes back at you gives you a sense of what is, what you're up against, right?
Yeah.
So a really strong person, it's coming back at you fast,
Right.
You hit them and it's like,
Whoa.
whoa. Where a really soft, weak person, it's just going to be like mushing through butter,
Right.
So you don't even need to.
So you pick up some information on. I mean, I love how Master Hong has fake, real. It's not fake, real. It's fake, real, real. So he tests you once, then he tests you again. He's using 2 fakes, and to get that extra. And then when he hits with the real, he's got another one right behind it. It's like this overkill effect.
It's the 1 and are the fakes, and the 2 is the real.
Right? It's 2, 3, 4, 5. The reels just pile on each other at that point.
First fake is one hand, second
Yeah,
fake
you
is
need to
the
get
other
both
hand.
of those hands out
Now
of the
you've
way.
got them sort of tied up, and you can go boom, 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 right? And that's like, I mean, you look at all of Hung Yishang students, that is what they do when they attack somebody. Basically, it's a
that's that helpless opponent effect. Because if one fake's probably not enough. Most people are able to block your first 2, but most can't handle the third and fourth.
That goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the swings, that if you're 1, 2, 3, if you're able to just keep swinging your arms, the 1, 2 is, they're tied up, and then you keep swinging 3, 4, and it's just,
right.
It's your ability to kind of recycle that motion that makes it effective.
He brings up that idea of sharing the common features with the diagnostic arts of Chinese medicine, which include like palpitation and really carefully observing the other person. So he says, the Chinese penchant for refining a skill to an almost imperceptible degree of complexity applies to testing in much the same way as it applies to skills used by Qigong and Chinese medical doctors. It involves evaluating features of the body which corresponded to an opponent's degree of physical and neural integration. It's actually quite amazing what can be revealed about the inside by observing the outside. Essentially, this skill comes back to evaluating one's Jing, Qi, and Shen. And I love how he mentions the Chinese penchant for refining a skill to an almost imperceptible degree of complexity. Like, it doesn't speak to internal martial arts where you take some basic looking exercise and then just fuse it with the most complicated inner mechanics.
Yeah, and it's about sensitivity, really. I mean,
it takes time to invest in to pick up that kind of awareness, but it can pay off and give you that split second advantage that is so critical when you're in a contest.
That's why the sometimes they use the term clever, right? You have to have clever hands or whatever, right? Your ability to touch has its own intelligence in a sense, and this is kind of, from my perspective, this is about the Qi and the Shen part of it, right? From my experience, it doesn't really matter. Like, you don't have to sit there and go, oh, well, it's this. Like, you have to feel it and react to it. You don't have to analyze it. So it's cool if you can, but like,
right, that's taking it to that next level,
right?
Like, categorizing everything.
Like, being able to do it is different than being able to, because this is like anything. It's like music or art or dancing. When you really get in the zone, right? it's an indescribable thing. Nobody can really
Right.
put, what it is, but we all kind of, have it. That penchant for going deep is really, um, yeah. I mean, it's a big part of,
Yeah, it is. And that, can keep you training for years to come. That's what gives Chinese martial arts that ability to continue to be fun and interesting for a lifetime. You never run out of stuff to work on. So I was thinking we could just finish up with a little bit from Blurred Boundaries, the book by Hung Zihan that we've been talking about in the Patreon. We've gotten to the point where the Western fanatic of martial arts has arrived at the school of Hung Yishang looking for a challenge match. And this is the way they're describing BK Francis has shown up. And he's arrived, and then he gets kicked out, and they say we don't fight. But then Hung Yishang says, "Hey, if this foreigner really wants to learn something, I admire the fact that he's willing to come out here and test himself. So let's let him come back and give him a try."
Hey folks, hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to hear the continuation of this and or the extended version of this episode, you can go over to the Patreon and subscribe for $5 a month or $10 a month. And you can also check out our Facebook and our Instagram for images to go along with the episodes. All right, take care and thanks for listening.